She thought their marriage was a duty, until she discovered her arrogant husband was a billionaire who had loved her from the start. Could a forced union become the greatest love story of their lives? Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're tuned in and ready to dive into today's story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be bringing you another exciting story you definitely don't want to miss. So, let's get started. The morning sun spilled across the marble floors of the sprawling city hospital, glinting off the polished surfaces and highlighting the pristine white uniforms of nurses and doctors bustling through the corridors. Among them strode Orlando, the renowned surgeon whose reputation for brilliance was only matched by his arrogance. Patients admired his skill, colleagues feared his temper, and the media adored the billionaire mystique that accompanied his name. But few saw the man behind the title, the careful guard around a heart no one had yet broken. Orlando moved through the hospital with a sharp efficiency, his hands steady, voice commanding, and eyes calculating. He was meticulous, precise, and entirely in control, until he caught a glimpse of the woman standing awkwardly near the reception desk. Andran. She looked completely out of place in her simple outfit, carrying herself with a quiet dignity that contrasted sharply with the chaotic hospital around her. Her family's debts had forced her into this marriage, and she was bracing herself for a life of cold indifference, wed to a man whose arrogance she had already heard whispers about. Andran's chest tightened, her stomach twisting with nerves and resentment. She would endure this marriage, but she would never fall for him. Not the arrogant Orlando, not anyone. Their first encounter was brief and sharp. Orlando, distracted by hospital paperwork, barely glanced at her before issuing curt instructions to a nurse. Andran, misinterpreting his dismissive tone, bit back a sarcastic retort and turned away, forcing herself to focus on the task ahead. Surviving her first day as his wife in name, even if not in spirit. Yet the spark of curiosity had already ignited. Orlando noted her poise, her quiet strength, and the subtle defiance in her gaze. She was unlike any woman he had met. A challenge? Yes, but also someone who stirred an unexpected warmth in his chest he didn't fully understand. He found himself lingering longer than necessary, watching her navigate the hospital's halls with grace and determination. Later, as Andran navigated the hospital corridors, she was struck by a small act of kindness from Orlando, an unspoken acknowledgement of her presence when he offered her a passing smile and a nod of respect. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but it made her pause. Could the arrogant man she was forced to marry really care? The contrast between them was clear. She saw only the surface, arrogance, control, and the weight of a man used to getting his way. He, however, saw beneath hers strength forged by necessity, dignity under pressure, and a heart that refused to break even when circumstances seemed cruel. By the evening, the mansion they shared felt more like a tension-filled arena than a home. The formalities of their arrangement, the signing of documents, the polite nods, the careful avoidance of eye contact, were only thin layers over the emotional currents running between them. Both were aware of the subtle pull, the unspoken questions hanging in the air. Who are you really? What do you want? Can we see each other beyond the masks we wear? Andran retreated to her room that night, exhausted from navigating both Orlando's world and her own fears. She sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle below, and wondered how a man so cold, so arrogant, could also inspire curiosity, and something she wasn't ready to name. Orlando, in his study, stared at his own reflection in the polished desk, thinking about her. He knew the marriage had begun as a convenience, an arrangement to protect her and honor his father's wishes. But something about her had already unsettled him. Her quiet strength, her unwavering composure under pressure, and the fleeting moments where her vulnerability peeked through. These had begun to erode his careful control. The night ended with both of them alone, separated by walls but drawn together by invisible threads of curiosity, tension, and the beginnings of admiration. Neither could admit it yet, but the seeds of something real had already been planted. A slow-burn connection that would challenge both their assumptions and their hearts. Will Andran be able to survive her forced marriage without succumbing to the unexpected feelings stirring between them? Or will Orlando's hidden warmth begin to break through the walls she's built? Have you ever been forced into a situation you didn't want, only to find unexpected feelings growing? Comment below. What would you do if someone unexpected captured your heart? The following week, Andran was learning the rhythms of life in the mansion and Orlando's world. What she hadn't anticipated was how these ordinary routines could feel charged with tension and emotion. Each passing glance, each fleeting brush of hands, seemed to carry meaning, messages unspoken, feelings unacknowledged. It happened one rainy afternoon. The mansion was quiet, rain tapping softly against the tall windows. Andran had been organizing the library, a task given to her by Orlando, who preferred solitude when working. As she reached for a book on a high shelf, her balance wavered slightly, and she nearly dropped it. Orlando, who had been quietly reviewing documents in the adjoining study, appeared in an instant, steadying the book in her hands. "You're clumsy," he said lightly, though the sharp edge of his usual arrogance was softened by concern. Andran bristled at the comment, though a small smile tugged at her lips. "I'm fine," she replied, trying to mask the sudden warmth that crept into her chest from his unexpected attentiveness. Orlando studied her, noting the way her eyes flickered with a mix of pride and vulnerability. He didn't comment further, but the air between them shifted subtly. It was electric, an unspoken recognition that the barriers separating them were beginning to blur. Later, as the rain fell harder, Orlando suggested they move to the conservatory, a bright glass room filled with plants and warmth. Andran followed, hesitant but curious. Once there, they shared a quiet moment of silence, watching droplets race down the glass panes. The shared tranquility brought a surprising intimacy, a sense of peace neither had expected. "You never asked why I agreed to this marriage," Orlando said, breaking the silence. His voice was soft, measured, vulnerable in a way he rarely allowed. Andran turned to him, startled. "I assumed it was obligation," she replied cautiously, trying to read his expression. Orlando gave a faint, almost wry smile. "Partly, but also because I knew. There was something about you I wanted to understand. Something real. I didn't expect to feel this strongly so quickly." His words were deliberate, loaded with subtext. Andran felt a shiver run down her spine. The arrogance was still there, but now it carried a vulnerability that pulled her in, contradicting everything she had believed about him. As the afternoon light faded, Orlando offered her a cup of tea, their fingers brushing as she accepted it. Neither spoke, but the contact lingered, a quiet affirmation of the attraction and curiosity simmering between them. Andran noticed herself studying his face, the subtle softness in his eyes, the rare gentleness of his movements, and felt emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the room, and for a moment, Orlando reached instinctively to steady her hand. Their eyes met, and in that instant words were unnecessary. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that their relationship had shifted. They were no longer just reluctant spouses. They were two people beginning to see each other in a new emotional light. Andran pulled back slightly, startled by her own feelings. We shouldn't," she whispered, though the tension in her voice betrayed her longing. Orlando's gaze softened, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Perhaps," he said gently. "But sometimes, reality has a way of forcing us to confront what we've been ignoring." The rain continued outside, a rhythmic backdrop to the emotional storm inside. In that moment, they were caught between restraint and desire, duty and curiosity, pride and the first stirrings of genuine connection. Will Andran let herself acknowledge the growing attraction to Orlando, or will fear and pride make her retreat before their bond deepens? Have you ever felt a sudden spark with someone you weren't supposed to love? Comment below. What would you do if attraction grew in the most unexpected situation? The day after the rain-soaked afternoon, the mansion felt different. The air between Orlando and Andran was charged with unspoken tension, each of them acutely aware of the emotional spark that had ignited, but neither willing to acknowledge it fully. Andran busied herself with household tasks, deliberately avoiding the places where Orlando might appear. She kept her distance, pretending the brief intimacy of the conservatory had never happened. Yet her thoughts betrayed her, constantly drifting to his soft gaze, the gentleness in his actions, and the warmth she hadn't expected to feel. She chastised herself. She couldn't allow herself to be drawn to him. This marriage was forced, temporary, and tied to obligations she didn't choose. Orlando, meanwhile, immersed himself in his work. But every time he glanced up from patient charts or surgical reports, he found her in his periphery, moving gracefully through the mansion. He felt a strange tension in his chest, a mixture of longing and frustration. He wanted to bridge the growing distance between them, yet pride and his usual guarded demeanor restrained him. He wasn't used to vulnerability, and the fear of misreading her feelings made him cautious. The resistance played out in subtle ways. Andran smiled politely when he spoke, but avoided lingering eye contact. Orlando offered assistance, but phrased it in clipped, professional tones. Yet beneath the surface, every glance, every brush of hands, every quiet gesture carried undercurrents of desire and curiosity. Both were resisting, consciously and unconsciously, the pull they felt toward each other. One evening, while reviewing hospital reports, Orlando caught Andran in the library, staring intently at a book about rare orchids. He approached, curious, and their hands brushed as he reached for the same volume. The contact was electric, and Andran recoiled slightly, forcing a polite smile. I'm just reading," she said quickly, trying to maintain distance. Orlando studied her for a moment, noting the conflict in her eyes, the simultaneous desire to connect and to resist. "Andran," he said quietly, "we're dancing around something we both feel. Pretending it isn't there won't make it disappear." She stiffened, defensive. "I'm not pretending anything," she replied sharply. I can't allow myself to fall into this. It's a marriage of necessity, not choice." His expression softened, a rare vulnerability showing through his usual arrogance. "And yet," he murmured, "our hearts sometimes have a way of choosing for us." The tension escalated over the following days. Small interactions, a shared glance, an accidental touch, a passing smile, became charged with unspoken emotion. Andran tried to retreat into propriety and routine, while Orlando attempted to maintain his composed, distant exterior. But resistance only intensified the undercurrent of attraction, making each encounter more fraught and emotionally potent. A turning point occurred when Orlando found Andran tending to a patient's needs during a hospital visit, a young child whose family reminded him of Andran's own sacrifices. Watching her gentle, compassionate care, he was struck by her strength, resilience, and kindness. For the first time, he allowed himself to fully acknowledge his feelings. He was falling for her, despite the forced circumstances, despite the arrogance he normally wielded like armor. Andran, meanwhile, caught herself watching him in moments of unguarded humanity. His soft smile with patience, his attentive listening, the rare moments when his guard dropped. She realized she was drawn to more than his brilliance or his wealth. She was captivated by the man beneath the surface. But fear, pride, and the weight of obligation kept her from admitting it even to herself. Their resistance created a delicate tension, a push and pull that neither could fully control. Every interaction became a test of patience and restraint, of pride versus vulnerability, of heart versus mind. The mansion, once a place of mere obligation, now felt like a battlefield of emotions, each trying to guard their heart while secretly craving connection. Will Orlando break through Andran's emotional walls, or will her resistance push him away before their hearts can truly meet? Have you ever been drawn to someone you felt you shouldn't? Comment below. Would you fight your heart or protect yourself? The mansion's grand hallway echoed with the soft patter of rain outside, a quiet rhythm that contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions brewing between Orlando and Andran. Fate, it seemed, had a way of forcing their paths to cross, regardless of the careful distance they were trying to maintain. It began with a sudden power outage in the mansion during a late afternoon storm. The lights flickered and went out entirely, leaving the expansive rooms bathed in the gray dimness of rainy twilight. Andran, startled, called out for Orlando, her voice carrying through the quiet halls. Orlando appeared quickly, his presence both reassuring and unavoidable. "We need to stick together until the generator kicks in," he said, his tone clipped but practical. Andran hesitated, then nodded, realizing she had no choice. Their reluctance to be in the same room evaporated in the face of necessity, and they moved toward the library to wait out the outage. In the dim light, the mansion felt transformed, intimate, almost cozy. Orlando guided and ran to a large armchair by the fireplace, where they could sit and keep warm. She tried to maintain a polite distance, but every step, every glance brought them closer. The forced proximity cracked open the walls they had built, exposing vulnerability they hadn't dared show before. They spoke cautiously at first, exchanging practical comments about the storm, the generator, and the safety of the house. But gradually, the conversation drifted toward more personal topics. Orlando shared memories of his early days as a doctor, long nights, small victories, and the quiet loneliness that had followed him despite his wealth. Andran, in turn, revealed the sacrifices she had made for her family, the burdens she carried, and the quiet strength she had relied on to survive. Their conversation flowed naturally, no longer restrained by pride or obligation. The physical closeness mirrored the emotional intimacy building between them. A brush of hands while passing a cup of tea, a shared laugh at a small joke, a moment of eye contact that lingered just a second too long. They were no longer just forced partners. They were two hearts beginning to recognize each other. As the storm raged outside, Orlando found himself opening up more than he had in years. "I've always been careful not to let anyone in," he admitted quietly. "But there's something about you and Ran, something I can't ignore." Andran's heart fluttered. She had felt the same pull but had convinced herself it was impossible. A dangerous distraction in a life already constrained by duty. The generator finally hummed to life, restoring light to the mansion, but neither moved immediately. They lingered in the dim glow of the fireplace, the storm outside fading into a background hum. In that space, the distance that had existed between them felt smaller, almost insignificant. Orlando, sensing the shift, reached out tentatively and brushed a strand of hair from Andran's face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she felt the warmth of his hand, the gentleness in his gesture, and the first real stirrings of trust and longing. They sat together in silence, hearts speaking where words had failed, discovering that proximity could lead not to tension, but to connection. For the first time since their forced marriage began, Andran allowed herself a moment of wonder. Could this arrogant, seemingly untouchable man be someone she could truly care for? And Orlando realized that the walls he had carefully built to guard his heart were crumbling in the presence of someone whose spirit matched his own. Will their forced proximity transform into genuine closeness? Or will fear and pride still hold them back from embracing what is slowly blossoming between them? Have you ever been stuck in a situation that forced you to get close to someone unexpected? Comment below. Could proximity lead to love? The quiet of the mansion that evening felt different, charged with the subtle electricity of vulnerability. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and cool. Andran and Orlando found themselves in the conservatory again, surrounded by the soft fragrance of blooming orchids. The previous days of forced proximity had loosened some of the tension between them, but neither had fully revealed the deeper layers of their hearts. It was Orlando who broke the fragile silence. "You know," he began carefully, "I haven't always been this way, arrogant, guarded, untouchable." He paused, watching her reaction. Andran tilted her head, curious. Sensing this was a rare window into the man behind the face. Orlando took a deep breath. "When I was younger, I lost someone very dear to me. My mother. She was everything. When she passed, I buried myself in work, in control, in this image of the untouchable man. I thought, maybe if I remained aloof, no one could hurt me the way I lost her." Andran listened, her heart softening. The arrogance she had felt in him was no longer just pride. It was armor, a shield forged from grief and fear. She saw not a billionaire hiding behind wealth, but a man shaped by loss, striving to protect his heart while longing to be seen. I think I was afraid of being close to anyone again," Orlando continued, voice low. "Until now." His eyes found hers, intense yet tentative. "Until you." And Ran felt the walls she had carefully maintained for weeks begin to crumble. Her own past, filled with sacrifices and fear of failure, mirrored his in unexpected ways. She shared her story, of a family burdened by debt, of opportunities lost to survival, of the quiet longing for someone to see her for who she really was. Their confessions wove together, each revelation creating a bridge between two hearts previously separated by circumstance, pride, and fear. For the first time, Orlando and Andran weren't playing roles. They were simply two people, vulnerable, honest, and drawn to each other. As the evening deepened, Orlando reached for her hand. The touch was deliberate, gentle, and full of meaning. And Ran didn't pull away. Instead, she felt an emotional release she hadn't allowed herself in years. The mansion, the marriage, the forced circumstances, all faded into the background as they discovered something real in each other. Yet, even in this moment of closeness, tension lingered. And Ran wondered whether Orlando's feelings were genuine or just a fleeting reaction to her presence. Orlando questioned whether Andran could truly see past his arrogance and wealth, past the carefully constructed image he projected to the world. Their bond had strengthened, but uncertainty still loomed, a reminder that love, even when born from forced circumstances, required trust, patience, and courage. Will the revelations of their pasts bring them closer, or will fear and mistrust still threaten to keep their hearts apart? Have you ever discovered the hidden side of someone and felt your heart change? Comment below. Would secrets bring you closer or push you away? The next morning, the mansion felt lighter, almost as if the confessions of the previous evening had lifted a weight off both Orlando and Andran. The tension that had defined their interactions for days was replaced with something softer. Cautious warmth, tentative trust, and the beginnings of genuine connection. Andran found herself in the kitchen, preparing breakfast with meticulous care. She had always found comfort in small routines, and today, the act of cooking for someone else, especially Orlando, felt strangely fulfilling. Orlando entered silently, observing her from the doorway, noticing the way her hands moved with purpose and grace. "You're really good at this," he remarked softly, not as a boss, not as a husband forced upon her, but as a man beginning to see her fully. And Ran glanced up, startled by the genuine compliment. I like to cook," she replied, her voice slightly hesitant but warm. "It's calming." He moved closer, helping her carry a tray of tea to the small breakfast table. The proximity was no longer uncomfortable. Instead, it felt natural. They ate together, sharing quiet conversation about small things. The city below, the weather, the subtle beauty of morning light filtering through the windows. Laughter came easily, a sound that had been rare in their household until now. After breakfast, Orlando suggested a walk through the mansion's garden. And Ran agreed, and for the first time, they walked side by side without pretense or formality. Orlando noticed how she paused to admire the flowers, how her eyes lingered on a butterfly fluttering past, how her presence filled the space with life. And Ran noticed the careful way he observed the world, the attentiveness in his gestures, the softness in his smile. During the walk, Orlando spoke of his childhood. Not the carefully curated image of wealth and success, but the moments of simple joy, the dreams he had nearly abandoned, the quiet wishes he had never shared. And Ran listened, offering empathy and understanding. Her own stories surfaced, less about obligations and more about her dreams, small joys, and hopes for a life beyond survival. In that shared space, laughter, smiles, and even brief moments of silence carried deep meaning. They began to recognize not just admiration, but a fragile emotional bond forming, one built on understanding, shared vulnerability, and trust slowly earned. As they returned to the mansion, a sudden breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine into the garden. Orlando reached out, taking Andran's hand in his, a gentle but deliberate touch that conveyed reassurance and warmth. And Ran didn't pull away. Instead, she felt a wave of emotional release. A mixture of relief, longing, and recognition that the walls she had built around her heart were beginning to crumble. For the first time, they shared a moment of quiet, unspoken intimacy. No words were necessary. Their hearts spoke for them. The emotional bond they were forming was tentative but undeniable. Each touch, each glance, each shared laugh deepened the connection. The mansion, once a place of obligation and tension, was now a sanctuary for their hearts to explore vulnerability and affection. Yet, even amidst this newfound closeness, uncertainty lingered. Both Andran and Orlando knew the road ahead would not be simple. Past fears, pride, and societal expectations still threatened to interfere. But for now, they allowed themselves to bask in the small joys of connection, cherishing the fragile peace that had begun to take root. Will this fragile bond survive the inevitable challenges ahead? Or will unresolved fears and pride tear them apart before their hearts fully unite? Have you ever started trusting someone slowly, one moment at a time? Comment below. Could a fragile bond turn into lasting love? The calm of their growing bond was shattered one afternoon when a seemingly innocent misunderstanding erupted into emotional chaos. Orlando had been called to the hospital unexpectedly, leaving Andran alone in the mansion. She had grown accustomed to his presence, to the quiet comfort of his attention, and the sudden absence left her unsettled. While waiting for him, she stumbled upon a folder on his desk labeled Family Affairs. Curiosity, mingled with fear, prompted her to peek inside. She found letters and documents hinting at Orlando's billionaire status and business dealings, things he had never revealed to her. The realization hit her like a cold wave. He had been hiding a huge part of his life from her. Andran's heart constricted with a mix of hurt and betrayal. How could he keep this secret? Had all their growing moments of closeness been based on deception? When Orlando returned, he found her sitting in the study, the folder clutched in her hands, her expression a storm of confusion and pain. Andran, what's wrong? He asked, concern lacing his tone. Why didn't you tell me? She demanded, her voice shaking. All this time, you've been hiding who you really are from me. Was any of this real? Her words cut deep, not just for him but for the fragile trust they had been building. Orlando's eyes widened, and he took a cautious step forward. I didn't hide it to deceive you, he explained, his voice calm but firm. I was testing, seeing if you could see me for who I am, not just for wealth or status. I wanted you to know me, the real me. Everything I've felt for you has been real, but Andran's pain was raw. You made me feel safe, like I could trust you, and yet you've been hiding your life from me? How am I supposed to believe you now? The emotional weight between them grew heavier with every passing second. Orlando felt frustration building alongside his love. Frustration at her misunderstanding, at the timing, at the fear that all they had worked toward could crumble in a single moment. He stepped closer, reaching for her hands, but she recoiled, unwilling to meet his touch. For hours, they circled each other emotionally, neither fully retreating but neither able to reconcile immediately. The mansion, once a sanctuary, felt cold and suffocating. Every glance was laden with accusation and defensiveness. Laughter and warmth of the previous days had been replaced with tension and heartbreak. The shatter point came when Andran, tears brimming, whispered, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can trust you again. Her voice broke, and Orlando's heart clenched painfully. He realized that all the emotional progress they had made was on the brink of collapse. In that moment, Orlando's carefully maintained composure slipped, leaving only vulnerability and raw emotion. Andran, I've never lied about my feelings for you. Not once. I know I scared you, and I know I should have told you sooner, but I needed you to love me, not my fortune. Please, don't walk away now. Not when we're so close to finding something real. Andran looked into his eyes, torn between love and hurt, vulnerability and pride. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the warmth of their bond again, but fear and doubt clung tightly. Will Andran walk away, letting fear destroy the love they've built? Or will she risk her heart and trust Orlando's words? Have you ever had a misunderstanding threaten a relationship you were building? Comment below. Would you fight for love or let it slip away? The mansion was silent that evening, a stark contrast to the emotional storm raging inside both Orlando and Andran. After their confrontation earlier, neither had spoken a word. The distance between them was palpable, yet both were acutely aware of the invisible threads that still connected their hearts. Orlando paced the study, grappling with his own pride and fear. He knew he had to choose between retreating behind his usual armor or risking vulnerability to reclaim Andran's trust. The arrogance he normally wielded felt hollow in the absence of her presence beside him. He realized that hiding behind wealth or prestige no longer mattered. What mattered was honesty, patience, and the courage to show his heart completely. Andran sat in the conservatory, the warm glow of the lamps casting soft shadows. She clutched the folder she had discovered earlier, the symbol of both betrayal and clarity. She had been forced into this marriage to protect her family, but now she understood that love was no longer optional. It had found its way into her life despite circumstances. Yet the fear lingered. Could she trust a man who had hidden such a fundamental part of himself, no matter his explanation? Could she open her heart again without regret? Hours passed, each steeped in reflection. Andran replayed the moments they had shared, the tenderness, the laughter, the subtle touches that spoke louder than words. She remembered Orlando's vulnerability, his quiet confessions, and the way he had looked at her with a mix of admiration and longing. Slowly, she felt the walls around her heart start to crumble. Orlando, too, thought back to their shared experiences. The storm, the conservatory, the laughter in the garden, the small but meaningful gestures that had bound them together. He knew that love required patience and trust, and that to win Andran fully, he needed to demonstrate that every word and every action was true. Finally, as the night deepened, Orlando approached the conservatory. Andran was seated quietly, lost in thought, but she felt his presence before she saw him. He knelt before her, taking both her hands in his. The vulnerability in his eyes mirrored her own hesitation and hope. Andran, he began softly, I don't want to lose you. I've been honest about my feelings, even if I was slow to share everything about my life. I need you to know, everything I've done, every choice I've made, has been with you in mind. I love you, not my fortune, not my name, not the world around us, just you. Andran's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of relief, joy, and lingering fear. Her voice trembled as she whispered, I want to believe you, Orlando. I do. But it's been so hard. I don't know if I can just trust without hesitation. He smiled gently, brushing a tear from her cheek. Then let me show you. Let me prove that our bond is real, that love can exist even in the most unexpected circumstances. You don't have to take my word, just take my heart. In that moment, the choice became clear. Both had the option to let pride and fear dictate their actions, or to embrace vulnerability, risking heartbreak in exchange for the possibility of something extraordinary. Andran slowly nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. Orlando's relief was palpable, and he drew her into a gentle embrace, holding her close as if to communicate everything his words could not. The mansion, once a place of tension and obligation, now radiated warmth and hope. Their hearts, previously guarded and wary, had found courage in each other. The path ahead would not always be smooth, but for the first time, both Orlando and Andran had chosen love consciously, fully, and without reservation. Will their choice to embrace love withstand the challenges ahead, or are there still unseen obstacles waiting to test their bond? Have you ever had to choose between pride and love? Comment below. Would you take the risk for a heart that truly matters? The mansion was bathed in the golden light of dawn, a new day breaking over the city. The storm of emotions, misunderstandings, and resistance that had defined their days together had finally given way to clarity, connection, and the quiet certainty of love. Orlando and Andran had faced their fears, their pride, and their insecurities, and had chosen each other. The morning began with simple, tender moments. Andran prepared breakfast, and this time, Orlando joined her willingly, their laughter filling the kitchen. There was no pretense, no distance, only two hearts fully present with each other. Every glance, every brush of hands, every shared smile reinforced the bond they had fought so hard to protect. After breakfast, Orlando suggested they take a walk in the mansion's garden, the same place where their bond had deepened days before. This time, however, the walk was different. There was no tension, no resistance. Only a peaceful intimacy that spoke of trust regained and love realized. They held hands naturally, their fingers intertwined, a symbol of the partnership and devotion that had grown between them. As they reached the center of the garden, Orlando stopped, turning to face Andran fully. "I know our journey hasn't been simple," he said, his voice warm and steady. "But every moment, every challenge, every hesitation, it led us here. I love you, Andran, completely. And I promise, from this day forward, to never let fear or pride come between us again." Andran's eyes glistened with tears of joy, her heart swelling with a love she had fought to deny. "I love you too, Orlando," she whispered. "I've waited so long to feel this. And now I know that we're meant to be together." Orlando pulled her into a gentle embrace, holding her as if letting go might undo the magic of the moment. The city below, the mansion around them, and the responsibilities that had once weighed heavily now faded into the background. In that embrace they had found home, not in a place, but in each other. Later, as they sat together watching the sun climb higher in the sky, Orlando reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Andran looked up, her heart catching. He opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "This isn't just a symbol of wealth or status," he said softly. "It's a promise of love, of partnership, of a future built together. Will you continue this journey with me, not as a forced marriage, but as my partner, my equal, my love?" Andran's hands trembled as she took the ring, sliding it onto her finger. "Yes, Orlando," she replied, her voice steady with certainty. "Yes, I will." They embraced once more, their hearts beating in quiet harmony. The mansion, once a place of obligation and tension, now felt alive with love, laughter, and hope. Friends and family would come, celebrations would follow, but for now, it was just the two of them, savoring the victory of hearts united. In the weeks that followed, their love continued to grow, strengthened by honesty, shared experiences, and the unwavering choice to trust each other. Andran discovered that Orlando's kindness and depth went far beyond the walls of his wealth and success, while Orlando realized that Andran's courage and compassion made her the heart he had long been searching for. The billionaire and the woman he once underestimated had found their way to each other, not through wealth, power, or obligation, but through understanding, vulnerability, and the decision to choose love over fear. And so, their story, a tale of forced circumstances transforming into true love, ended not with tension, but with triumph. Two hearts, once guarded and uncertain, now beat as one, ready to face the future together. The morning light reflected in their intertwined hands, reminding them of the day their hearts truly met. Though challenges may come, love, real, unwavering and chosen, would always guide them home. Have you ever found love where you least expected it? Comment below. Could a forced beginning lead to your heart's greatest happiness? Thank you so much for watching my story all the way to the end. Your support means everything. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.